Hey guys, my name is Autumn. A bunch of you may have met me already, but if you haven't, I'm on staff at Fellowship as the Director of Children and Family Ministries. So, what that means is I organize and oversee all the programs for the kids and stuff relating to families. But this has been a really weird weekend. At least that's how I feel. Everything just feels strange. And Thursday, at least for my family, was the last kind of semi-normal day that we had. My youngest already didn't have school on Thursday, so it was a bit of a figuring things out to make sure her childcare was covered. And so then on Thursday, after picking up my kids and getting everyone back at home, we knew that the situation was a bit tenuous. And then late on Thursday evening, heard that DPS had decided to go ahead and extend their spring break by 2 weeks, so our kiddos will not have school for the next 2 weeks, which means they're off for a little over 3 weeks. And trying to figure out what all of this stuff means, trying to read reputable sources of information and decide on best course of action, and all of those things have kind of been filling our time in the past couple of days. But my birthday actually was on Friday, so Thursday was, like I said, semi-normal. And then on Friday, I woke to a gray sky, snow falling, stock market crashing, worldwide pandemic. So happy birthday to me. It was a really strange day and has continued to just feel strange. But on Thursday night, when I was putting Ivy, my youngest, to bed, we just usually read through this book, this gospel story Bible book, before bed. That's what we were reading through, and the story happened to be from Exodus 14 that day, which is in Exodus chapter 14, the Israelites are at the edge of the Red Sea. So after a long dialogue back and forth between Moses, representing the voice of God speaking through Moses, and Pharaoh negotiating letting the Israelites go, which eventually happens in the book of Exodus. So Pharaoh has finally relented, and the Israelites have left Egypt, gathered up as many possessions as they can. They have their livestock and their children, and they've headed out of Egypt because they've finally been freed. And God is leading them. God's presence is indicated at this point in Israel's journey as a pillar of cloud during the day and of fire at night. They find themselves at the edge of the Red Sea, and God told Moses that that is where they were supposed to camp. He said in the first couple of verses of chapter 14, "You shall encamp facing it by the sea." So God's presence has led them right there to the edge of the sea. And then Pharaoh has changed his mind, and he is pursuing them with his army, with chariots. And the Egyptian army was mighty at this point in time. And so Israel is stuck between the sea. This huge group of people, recently freed slaves, are stuck between the sea and Israel and Pharaoh's approaching Egyptian army. And they didn't know what to do. So a few things, though, were clear to them. First of all, it was clear that God's presence was with them and that God had led them right there to the edge of the sea. Another thing that was clear to them is that there is no way they could go back. They couldn't face the Egyptian army. That would be certain death for them. But they also couldn't go forward into the sea with their livestock and their babies. That also meant death for them. So this is what was clear, was that they were in this confusing situation with no clear way out. And so as I was reading this story to Ivy, it occurred to me that in this situation that the Israelites found themselves in, here's what we know based on the outcome of the story: that in a time of confusion and probably chaos, when they were trying to figure out what to do, there was no clear solution. And yet God made a path for them. He created a path for his people. That wasn't anything that they had imagined. He made a way for Israel. And this caused me then to think about the situation that we found ourselves in, that we find ourselves in now, in which there are a lot of differing opinions. The way forward may not be clear, but what is clear is that God makes a way for his people. It's also clear from the story and from what we know to be true from other places in the Bible that the path that God provides isn't always bound by human wisdom. The way out was actually nothing that the Israelites imagined for themselves. It's also clear that God isn't bound by the situation, that he exists outside of it and actually is in control of it. Even though there was no clear way out, God wasn't limited by what they perceived. And it also is clear, Hunter shared some of this in his email to the church a couple of days ago, but it also is clear that the path that God provides, while it isn't bound by human wisdom and it isn't limited by the situation, because God is God, it is always bound by seeking God, by loving God with our heart, soul, and mind, and by loving each other as ourselves. That is always what is true of God's path. And so in a time when there's this big continuum and a lot of opinions, and whether you find yourself more on the end of people are going crazy and you should stop buying up all the toilet paper and hand sanitizer and just wash your hands, or if you find yourself on the other end of the continuum and are prone to think, man, there is no way that can be the answer. We can't just wash our hands and hope for the best. Wherever you fall in those opinions, what is clear is that God's path is bound by seeking God, loving God with our heart, soul, and mind, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And if we all do that together, if we seek God, and love each other, then the path, a step at a time, that God lays out before you will be clear. But we know that those things hem in God's path for us during this time. God did create that path for Israel. They did go through the sea. God did defeat the Egyptian army. And then in chapter 15, Moses and the people of Israel sing a song of praise to the Lord for this triumph. In a few of those verses, it says, "Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glorious deeds, doing wonders? You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. You have led in your steadfast love the people whom you have redeemed. You have guided them by your strength to your holy abode." So I'm praying for you guys during these days. I'm praying that you will seek God, that you will love God, love each other, and that you will see God clearly in the midst of this.